Chapter 24. Riva tried to scream, but all that came out was a hacking croak. She couldn't get enough air in to try again. "She's killing me." Riva grabbed hold of Grace's wrists and tugged. She dug her nails into the flesh, scratched at the skin, trying to loosen the grip of those hands. She couldn't do it. The scarf tightened. A burning wire cutting Riva, cutting her. Riva began to choke. She felt her eyes bulge. Black spots danced in front of them. A rushing sound filled her ears. "I can't breathe. Can't get any air at all. She's killing me. I'm going to die, just like Tracy and Liza." Desperate to get free, Riva kicked backward, slamming her heel into Grace's shin. Grace hissed in pain, but she didn't let go of the scarf. Riva kicked again and missed. She twisted her whole body from side to side, twisted and turned, staggering back and forth. Grace held on, staggering with her, pulling the scarf, killing Riva. As they lunged across the room together, Riva suddenly heard the door burst open, and then a wild, high-pitched cry. "Hi-ya!" Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a blurry figure standing in the doorway. Michael. Her brother raised his arm over his head and yelled again. "The evil Avenger is here," he bellowed. Then he laughed, his blue eyes gleaming with excitement. "Oh no, he thinks it's a game," Riva realized. Couldn't he see? Couldn't he tell she was being strangled? "This is no game, Michael," she wanted to cry. "Get out of here. Go get help." But she couldn't yell. She felt so weak, so far away. Michael gave another fierce cry and rushed into the room. He raised his arm higher, and Riva saw a flash of metal. The fake knife. It won't work, Riva thought desperately. Grace won't even feel it. Michael plunged the knife into Grace's side. "The evil Avenger strikes again!" He giggled, then stuck the collapsible knife into Grace's shoulder. Without letting go of the scarf, Grace tried to shove Michael away with her elbow. The moment gave Riva the chance she needed. She grabbed Grace's arm with both hands and jerked it down. The hand loosened its grip. Riva lunged sideways, throwing Grace off balance. Coughing and gasping, Riva broke free, then spun around and shoved Grace away from her as hard as she could. Grace stumbled backward, her arms pinwheeling as she tried to keep from going down, but she couldn't stop herself. Riva heard a sickening crack as Grace's head slammed into a corner of the desk. Grace fell to the floor with a thud. She didn't move. A trickle of blood ran down the side of her head. Michael stopped laughing. His mouth dropped open in a startled squeak. Riva's neck throbbed and her throat felt crushed. The scarf still clung to her neck. She fumbled with it, coughing painfully. "Riva?" Michael's voice was tiny and frightened. From the floor, Grace gave a low moan. "Michael?" Riva rasped, finally getting the scarf all the way off. "Go get the security guard." "Okay," Michael answered. Grace moaned again. Michael eyed her warily. "Is she going to be okay?" Riva tried to clear her throat. "Don't worry. Just go find the security guard and tell him to come up here. Hurry, Michael." Michael jammed a knife into his pocket and raced from the room. Riva rubbed her throat and swallowed several times. "She tried to kill me," she thought, staring at Grace. "She almost did." Moaning again, Grace's eyes fluttered open. She turned onto her side, then slowly eased herself into a sitting position. Riva tensed up. Would Grace come after her again? But Grace didn't try to climb to her feet. She sat on the rug, exhausted and dazed. As she glanced groggily around the room, her gaze fell on Riva. Riva stared back horrified. "Why?" she whispered hoarsely. "Why did you kill Tracy and Liza?" "To show you." Grace rubbed her head, then stared at the blood on her fingers. "To show you that you can't have everything you want. You think you can take everything, that everything is yours." Riva shook her head. "Oh, yes, you do," Grace declared bitterly. "You think everything is yours, so I wanted to kill you." She wiped her bloody fingers on the carpet. "But first I wanted to frighten you, to make you suffer, to show you what real horror is like. But Grace—" "Shut up, Riva," Grace snapped. "You treat everyone like dirt, everyone. Me, the maid, your cousin, but especially the guys. You save the worst for the guys." Riva couldn't believe this. What was Grace talking about? "I had a wonderful guy once," Grace continued in a soft, dreamy voice. Her lips twisted in a weird smile. "I had Rory." "Yeah, and you killed him," Riva thought. "He was so great, Riva. I was wild about him." Grace stared at the bloody carpet for a moment. Then she squeezed her eyes shut. "But we had a fight while we were driving. We were both so angry, shouting at each other. I grabbed the wheel and... Her voice broke and she began to sob. It was an accident, as her mother said, Riva realized. A horrible accident, and the guilt drove Grace crazy. Grace flung her head back and stared at Riva, tears streaming down her face. I wanted you to see what that kind of loss feels like, she cried. But why Tracy and Liza? Riva asked. I hardly knew Liza, and I didn't even like Tracy. Why did you think killing them would hurt me? Because of the fashion show. Grace wiped at her tears and smiled that weird smile again. It was the first thing I ever saw you really want. You wanted it so much, you stole all the credit from your own cousin. Because it was so important, it was the first thing that ever meant something to you. So I decided to take it away from you, bit by bit, person by person. Riva felt a sharp stab of disappointment. Grace is right, she realized. The show meant more to me than anything. You were scared, weren't you, Riva? Grace asked, almost pleadingly. You did suffer. Riva thought of all the work she'd done to get the show ready, designing the set, choosing the models and the music. She remembered the feeling of excitement as it all started to come together. And then she pictured the two strangled models, the customers racing from the showroom, screaming in panic. The fashion show, her fashion show, ruined. And she had been scared, especially after Liza was killed. She thought somebody might kill her. Well, somebody almost did, she thought, staring at her roommate. I saved you for last, Grace told her. I was going to let you watch everything fall apart, and I was going to kill you. Grace's eyes filled with tears again, and she hung her head. But I failed. But Rory will finish the job for me. Oh no, she's back to Rory again. Watching Grace cry, Riva actually felt sorry for the girl. She'd gone totally off the deep end. Rory will kill you for me. Still sobbing, Grace raised her head and gazed at the door. There he is now, she cried, scrambling to her feet. Rory, I knew you'd come. Kill her. Kill Riva. It's her imagination, Riva thought. Rory's dead, isn't he? A movement caught her eye. Someone stood in the doorway. Kill her, Rory, Grace shouted. Riva spun around in horror. Chapter 25. Kill her, Grace screamed, pointing at Riva. Do it, Rory. Do it now. But Rory wasn't in the doorway. The security guard stood there, looking slightly confused. Michael stayed in the hall and peeked wide-eyed around the doorframe. Kill Riva, Grace shrieked. Please, Rory. Please kill her for me. She took a stumbling step toward the guard. The guard's eyes hardened. His hand went to his gun. No, Riva shouted at him. She doesn't know what she's talking about? Yes, I do. I want you to kill her. Please, Rory. Why won't you do it? Grace covered her face with her hands. Why won't you help me? She sobbed. Keeping his hand on the gun, the guard glanced at Riva. Riva took a shaky breath. You'll have to take her to the police, she told the guard. She killed 2 people, but take it easy with her. She's sick. She needs help. I'll call her mother. The guard nodded and took hold of Grace's arm. She glanced up at him. You're going to help me, aren't you, Rory? Sure. Come on. Gently, the guard tugged on Grace's arm and led her out of the room. Wow, Michael breathed. That was weird, huh? Very weird, Riva agreed. But it's over, Michael. And, Michael? Yeah? Thanks for coming in when you did, she told him. You saved my life? No kidding? Michael's eyes lit up. He whipped out the fake knife. The evil Avenger to the rescue, he shouted and raced down the hallway. Riva smiled. The horror is finally over. I'm not in danger anymore. Grace will be taken care of. Slowly, she slumped to the bed, looked up Grace's number again in the student directory, and called her mother. She explained what had happened to a horrified Mrs. Morton. Those poor girls, Mrs. Morton sobbed. I'm so glad you're all right, Riva. I'm leaving for Shadyside right now. Grace's doctor is coming tomorrow. Maybe my poor Grace will really be cured one day. Maybe, Riva thought, but I wouldn't count on it. Riva said goodbye and hung up. Feeling exhausted, she started to lie back on the bed. Then she remembered her father. She had to tell him. Quickly, she punched in his office number at Dalby's. He answered on the first ring. Daddy, I have to tell you what happened, Riva announced. Then she blurted out the whole horrible story about Grace. And you're sure you're all right? Mr. Dalby asked anxiously when she finished. I'm fine, she assured him. My throat's a little sore and I'm tired, but I'm really okay, Daddy. I feel so bad about Tracy and Liza, of course, and Grace too. I mean, she's sick, but it's all over, Daddy. Isn't that great? It's wonderful, he agreed. And now I can go ahead with the fashion show, Riva told him. Huh? Mr. Dalby cried. After all that's happened, isn't that the last thing you want to do? Definitely not, Riva replied. Grace was right about one thing. The show is really important to me, and it's even more important now. But, Daddy, please, let me go ahead with it, Riva begged. I need something to help me forget all the horrible things that have happened, and everything is ready, the scarves and the set and the music. We could have a show tonight. Tonight? What about the models? Her father asked. Didn't you plan on having 3 of them? Riva thought fast. Yes, but couldn't you get 2 of the store models to replace Tracy and Liza? Forget what color hair they have, she thought. Just as long as they don't trip over their own feet, I'll take them. Daddy? Well, Mr. Dalby hesitated, but only for a few seconds. I suppose you're right, honey. Doing the show will take your mind off things. And it will be good for business, too, Riva reminded him. Mr. Dalby grunted. All right. I'll line up a model for you. There's not enough notice to do it tonight. The store is open until 10 tomorrow. So how about tomorrow at 7 for the show? Perfect. Thank you, Daddy, Riva cried. I'll see you later. Riva said goodbye, then quickly got Ellie's phone number from information and punched it in. When Ellie picked up, Riva quickly explained the situation. The show is at 7 tomorrow night. I'll be there at 6. But could you go a little earlier and make sure everything's ready? Sure, Ellie replied. No problem. I'll let Maria know, too. Great. I'll meet you in the showroom at 7. Riva hung up and clicked her nails on the bedside table. What next? Pam, she thought, and snatched up the phone. Pam, she cried when her cousin answered. You are not going to believe what happened? Once again, she explained about Grace and the murders. That's awful, Pam exclaimed. I feel so terrible about Liza and Tracy, but somehow I can't help feeling bad for Grace, too. That poor girl. Hey, what about me? Riva asked. I almost got strangled, remember? Anyway, forget all that. I have some fantastic news. Daddy's letting me go ahead with the fashion show. Really? Pam cried. After all the horrible stuff that happened? It's good business? Riva rolled her eyes. Of course, Pam didn't have a clue about business. She should be grateful Riva had taken over the scarf show. People are still going to shop, you know, especially at Christmas. Oh, I guess you're right. Of course I am, Riva agreed. The show's tomorrow night at 7. You and Willow should get down to the store right away and get to work. I'll see you tomorrow. Hanging up, Riva hurried into her private bathroom to take a long, soothing bath. The horror is over, she thought, smiling to herself. And I'm right back where I belong, on top. Pam glanced at her watch. 6 o'clock. She sighed and bent over the long green scarf she was working on. She and Willow had been at Dalby's all day, making more scarves. Usually Pam enjoyed it, even in the small, airless room Riva gave them. She loved working with the material, seeing her very own designs come alive. Why wasn't she enjoying it now? On the other side of the table, Willow tossed down a cherry-red scarf and clicked her tongue in disgust. That's the 3rd time I messed up the stitching. I'm a total klutz today. I don't feel like working at all. Me either, Pam told her. I keep thinking about Tracy and Liza. I mean, Grace strangled them with our scarves. I know it's not our fault, but it's all so sick. I just can't seem to get excited about the show. Yeah, Willow agreed, fingering her gold nose hoop. 2 people are dead. It's just so awful. Pam nodded. I should be glad about the show, I suppose. Riva says it's good business. Riva would, Willow declared with a snort. Then she shrugged. I guess I shouldn't complain. Somebody has to think about business, and maybe we'll make some money at least. Right. Pam inspected the green scarf. Speaking of Riva, I'm going to check with her and see if she wants to use this scarf tonight or save it for the next show. She should be here by now. Picking up the scarf, Pam left Willow and went down the hall to the showroom. The big room was dim and shadowy. The only light came from a weak bulb somewhere behind the revolving doors. Pam stepped in and waited for her eyes to adjust. What was that noise? It sounded like breathing, but not normal breathing, gasping almost. Was someone there? Pam moved cautiously down the center aisle, peering through the darkness. The raspy breathing continued. Pam took a few more steps, then she stopped suddenly. Riva! Pam's cousin lay in front of the revolving doors, sprawled on her stomach, her red hair shining in the weak light. Someone knelt next to her, bending over her. A guy, Pam saw. She heard Riva gasp again, a choking, guttural sound that sent a chill down Pam's spine. The guy stayed on his knees, bending over Riva, pulling at something. At what? Hurrying forward, Pam saw a flash of red around Riva's neck, and more red in the guy's hands. A scarf! A red scarf! He's killing her, pulling the scarf tighter and tighter, strangling her. With a shriek, Pam flew onto the stage. She threw herself at the guy, knocking him off balance. He fell with a thud, but Pam barely glanced at him. Terrified, she bent over her cousin. Riva lay still. The horrified choking sounds had stopped completely. "She's dead! You murdered her!" Pam cried, dropping to her knees beside Riva's still body. "You murdered Riva!" Chapter 26. "She's dead! She's dead!" Pam shrieked. "You killed her! You killed Riva!" Tears blurred her eyes. Sobbing, she reached out to touch Riva's shoulder. With a wild cry, the guy knocked Pam's hand away. Then he grabbed her shoulders and hauled her roughly to her feet, shoving her away from her cousin's body. "Why?" Pam cried, staggering backward. "Why?" "You shouldn't have come in here," he shouted. "You shouldn't have seen." His eyes burned with fury. "Now I have to kill you too." Pam backed away, her heart pounding. Terrified, she twisted her green scarf around her sweaty hands. "Why did you kill Riva?" she repeated in a shaky whisper. "Because." The guy clenched his fists and glared down at the still figure on the stage floor. "Because she—" Pam's eyes darted around the dimly lit showroom. She had to get out of here and get help. "Because she what?" she asked, taking another step backward. The guy stared at her. Pam froze. He turned back to Riva. "Because—" He stopped again. Pam saw his expression change. The anger faded and a look of total horror swept over his face. "What's going on?" she uttered. "Oh no." Uttering a long wail, the guy sank to his knees beside Riva's body. He took hold of her shoulder and turned her onto her back. As Riva's red hair fell away from her face, Pam gasped in shock. It's not Riva, she realized. It's Ellie. As Pam stared down at the lifeless form of Riva's look-alike model, the guy uttered another horrified wail. "No, what have I done? What have I done?" he cried. "I killed the wrong one." Running a little late, Riva hurried down the hall toward the side door of the showroom. She was eager to check the place out and make sure Ellie had everything ready. As she entered the door, she stopped, surprised and annoyed. Why was the room so dark? Did Ellie forget to come early and get everything set up? With a scowl, Riva edged along the wall, searching for the big switch that turned on the stage lights. As her fingers touched it, she heard a sound from the stage. A horrible moaning sound. Riva froze. The sound came again, full of anger and panic. "The wrong one," a voice choked out. "The wrong one." Slowly, Riva dropped her hand. Moving quietly, she edged her way farther along the wall. When she was able to see onto the stage, Riva stopped again, horrified. Ellie lay sprawled on her back near the revolving doors, a long, cherry-red scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Pam stood nearby, nervously twisting a green scarf around her hands, as if it were a dish towel. Pam stared at the guy kneeling next to Ellie. Grant Nichols. As Riva watched, Grant ran a hand through his curly hair. "It shouldn't be her," he muttered. "It shouldn't be." "What are you talking about?" Pam whispered. "You killed Ellie, but you meant to kill Riva?" A chill ran up Riva's spine. That could be me, she thought, staring at Ellie. But why? Why would Grant want to kill me? "Why?" Pam asked, echoing Riva's thought. Grant shuddered and sighed. "I felt so guilty. About Liza." "What do you mean?" Pam cried. "You mean you killed Liza? But—" "No, I didn't kill her. Riva did," Grant snapped. "Huh?" Riva couldn't believe this. "Riva did," Grant repeated. "Oh, I know she didn't actually strangle her, but she might as well have. It was Riva's fault that Liza died. All Riva's fault." "No," Riva thought. "He's wrong. He's crazy." "I knew it was Riva's fault," Grant continued, sounding hopeless. "And where was I? I couldn't help Liza, because I was out with Riva, sneaking out with Riva, behind Liza's back." "But that doesn't make it Riva's fault," Pam protested. "It does," Grant cried furiously. "I really cared about Liza, and Riva knew it. I told Riva, but Riva made me think she cared about me, that she needed me." Grant shook his head. raking his fingers through his hair again. But it was a trick, he groaned. Riva didn't care. She didn't need me. Liza did, and I wasn't there. Riva closed her eyes for a second, thinking about Grant's words. Were they true? Grace had accused her of using people, especially the guys, using them and then throwing them away when she didn't need them anymore. Now Grant was saying practically the same thing, saying she tricked him into sneaking out on Liza by pretending to need him. But I didn't force him to sneak around with me, Riva thought, and I did need him, didn't I? Not really, Riva had to admit to herself. I just wanted somebody around during the holidays. I didn't care about him the way he cared about Liza. After Liza died, I just snapped, I guess. Grant's voice from the stage broke into Riva's thoughts. I had to pay Riva back. That's all I could think about, paying Riva back, and I decided that she had to die. With a shudder, Riva glanced down at Ellie. I knew exactly how to do it, too, Grant went on. Strangle Riva just the way Liza and Tracy were strangled. Then, whoever killed them would be blamed for Riva's murder, too, and I'd get away with it. Pam shook her head silently, a look of horror in her eyes. Grant gazed up at her. But then you came in, and... He turned his head and stared at Ellie again. It isn't Riva. I killed the wrong one. It isn't Riva. No kidding, Riva thought. She forgot about feeling guilty and started feeling angry. Maybe Grant had snapped, but no way he would get away with murder. Furious, Riva strode toward the revolving doors, her shoes clicking loudly on the stage floor. Pam gasped. Grant raised his head. When he saw Riva, his eyes narrowed. You, he muttered. Yes, it's me, and I heard everything, Grant, Riva told him icily. But guess what? Your plan was no good from the start. The police already have Tracy's and Liza's murderer. No, Grant shook his head. You're wrong, Riva. They don't have Liza's killer, or Tracy's either. Sorry, but they do, Riva declared. She's at the police station right now, and you'll be joining her, Grant. You'll be arrested for Ellie's murder. No, you're the real killer, Riva. Riva shook her head. Come on, Pam. Let's get out of here and call the police. No, Grant shrieked again, his face turning dark red with fury. You're the killer, Riva. It's all your fault those girls are dead. All your fault. Stop it, Pam cried, nervously twisting the scarf around and around. Stop saying that. Grant ignored her. He stared at Riva, his eyes flaming with hatred. Riva froze for a second. Your fault, Grant repeated, and now you have to die too. Pam screamed. Before Riva could react, Grant leaped to his feet. You have to die, he bellowed furiously as he dove across the stage. You have to die, Riva. Chapter 27. Pam screamed again. Riva whirled around to run. Her foot twisted and she lurched sideways. You have to die, Grant shouted. She heard his hoarse breathing. Then she felt his breath on her neck, felt his fingers brush her back. He'll get me, her mind shrieked as she tried to gain her balance. He'll kill me. As Grant's hand grabbed her shoulder, Riva screamed. And then Grant seemed to stumble. His hand slid away, and Riva heard a loud thump. Riva! Pam shouted. Help me! Quick! Her heart racing, Riva spun back around. Grant lay face down on the stage floor. Caught under his legs was a long green scarf. Pam had wrapped it around his ankles and tripped him. Gasping in fear, Pam grabbed the ends of the scarf and hurried to tighten them around his ankles. Grant lifted his head from the floor and shook it. He seemed slightly dazed from the fall, but then he got his arms underneath him and started to heave himself up. With a scream, Pam shoved him down. Help me, Riva, she shouted again, struggling to wrap the scarf tighter as Grant kicked and struggled. I need to tie his ankles. Help me, or he'll get away. Grant raised himself with one arm and swung back viciously with the other. His fist almost collided with Pam's jaw. Riva stepped over to him and kicked Grant's arm out from under him. He hit the floor hard. Before he could move again, Riva planted her foot on the back of his neck and pushed down. I wouldn't try to get up, Grant, she told him. She pressed down harder with her black platform shoe. If you do, I'll put all my weight on your neck. That's a promise. Riva pushed again, harder. Grant stayed down, breathing hard. Pam quickly finished wrapping the scarf and tying it into a tight knot. Then she raced to the side door and shouted for the store guards. As she hurried back to Riva, she suddenly stopped. Riva, look! Ellie is moving. Riva's gaze snapped to Ellie. The red-haired model's head turned slowly back and forth, and she let out a soft groan. Pam dropped down next to her. "I can't believe it," she exclaimed, gently unwrapping the red scarf from Ellie's neck. "I thought for sure she was dead." "She probably would be if you hadn't come in here," Riva told her. "You saved her life." She paused. "Mine too?" "Thanks, Pam." Before Pam could respond, 2 uniformed store guards rushed in. Riva took her foot off Grant's neck and breathed a sigh of relief. The horror was finally over. "Hi-ya!" Michael chopped the air with his hands. He spun around and planted a kick on the back of the living room couch. The couch shuddered and slid forward about an inch. With another cry, Michael did his ninja routine again, then ran over to the Christmas tree and began to check out all the packages underneath it. Riva poured 2 mugs of hot cider and handed them to Pam and Willow, who sat near the fireplace. As she picked up her own mug, she turned on the radio. Silent Night began to play softly. Riva started to turn the radio off. Then she changed her mind. Everything is all right now, she reminded herself. You can't let a Christmas song give you nightmares anymore. "I can't believe it's Christmas Eve already," Pam declared. "With everything that's happened, I almost forgot about Christmas." Willow laughed. "Not me. We get 2 days off from work. I'd never forget something like that." Riva sat down in one of the wing chairs and sipped some cider. "I still don't see why you don't quit that horrible job." "Simple." Laughing again, Willow tossed her head and her fake diamond nose stud glittered in the firelight. "We need the money." "Willow is right. With the scarf show canceled, we both have to work," Pam grinned. "But once our design company gets off the ground, we'll kiss the Acme Insurance Company goodbye." Riva smiled back. The scarf show was history, but her father had decided to stock some of Pam's and Willow's other designs year-round. Vests, more scarves, even a few dresses would be in the Dalby department stores as fast as Pam and Willow could get them ready. And then they'd be marketed under the Pam Willow label. Riva felt glad for them, but even though she didn't have anything to do with the company, she still thought Riva Wear was a much catchier name, but forced herself to keep her mouth shut about it. It was Christmas Eve after all. "Hey, Riva," Michael called out, holding up a large package wrapped in red paper. "This one is for me." "Don't shake it," Riva warned him. "And don't try to peek through the wrapping paper either. You can open it tomorrow." Michael slowly set the package down, looking disappointed. Then he jumped up and raced toward the couch, aiming his foot for another ninja kick. "Hi-ya!" The couch slid forward another half-inch. "Isn't it going to scratch the floor?" Pam asked. "Maybe he should stop." "Oh, let him do it," Riva told her. "Sometimes it's nice to have a ninja around." "Right," Willow agreed. "Too bad he wasn't there when Grant attacked Ellie and tried to kill you, Riva." "I didn't need a ninja that night. I had Pam," Riva replied, turning to her cousin. "Thanks again, Pam. You saved my life?" Pam fiddled with her ponytail, looking embarrassed. "Actually, I didn't save your life," she said. "The green scarf did." "I guess you're right," Riva laughed. "Grant didn't stand a chance with it tied around his ankles. It was really well made." She sipped some cider and leaned back in her chair. "You know, I'm thinking of buying one for myself. Any idea where I can get it?" "You don't have to buy one." Pam went to the Christmas tree and picked up a box wrapped in shiny green foil. She held out the box to Riva and grinned. "Guess what I'm giving you for Christmas?" This has been a Nightfall Audiobooks production of Silent Night 3 by R.L. Stine, a Fear Street Super Chiller, Book 11. Hi, this is Chris again with Nightfall Audiobooks. Thank you very much for joining me for the end of Silent Night 3. I didn't think Riva could get any worse, and she did. She really, really did. Everything she does, all of her motivations, are all about her. And everybody in this book is right. Grace, Grant, they say the same thing. Riva uses people, and when she's done, she just throws them away, breaks up relationships, doesn't care. She did that in the first book. She did it in this book. I saw the twist coming with Grace just talking to an empty number a long time ago, so that wasn't really a surprise. But then when Grant tried to kill Riva and almost killed Ellie, that was a real surprise. I didn't see that coming into play. I'm glad I did this trilogy. It's a very diverse series. The first book is about a robbery, the second book is about a kidnapping, and the third book is about industrial espionage. or about Riva trying to steal her cousin's designs. And that was really scummy. I mean, yeah, a lot of stuff was happening, but Riva is so self-centered, she was just using the deaths of the models as an excuse to not talk to a lawyer and write up a business contract. But I don't know what she was planning on doing. Like, how does that work? For every scarf sold, they all go to Riva? Why would she do that? And she was really beating the crap out of Pam and Willow at the end there. Like, hey, you guys better get to work and make me more scarves. And Pam and Willow were like, I remember when doing this was fun. I don't want to do this anymore. It's really cool that Pam and Willow went to Robert Dalby and said, hey, Riva's not being fair. She's not playing fair. She's not cutting us a deal. You got to fix this. And it's nice that Riva got some of her own for once. So that's the end of the Silent Light series. I hope Riva Dalby is all done with Fear Street and the Super Chillers. I don't want to see her ever again. She is such a pain to do. She's so negative and so emotionally charged. I mean, she's a fun character, but she's emotionally draining to record her lines. Do I recommend the Silent Night series? Absolutely, 100%. It's a very diverse set. You get a lot of good characterization and motivations and imagery, and it's really, really well done. This is R.L. Stine at his best. I highly, highly recommend this series. So check them out. What should I do next? I don't know. Write me an email, nightfallaudiobooks@gmail.com. I'm also on YouTube at Nightfall Audiobooks. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I like reading what you have to say. So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell whoever you think would like to listen to me tell them tales from R.L. Stine. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time.